Check out these harmonies, sung by a single singer and layered to sound like a choir. Gerry Rafferty.
My way of telling you that every day.
Gordon Lightfoot.
Sundown, you better take care if I find you've been great.
Joni Mitchell.
Paradise, put up a parking lot.
Dan Fogelberg.
Leader of the band is tired and his eyes are growing old.
David Crosby. Gorgeous, right? I mean, that's the magic of a single singer layering their voice anywhere from 6 to 12 times to create thick choir-like harmonies. It's actually a sound unique to the modern era of multi-track recording. It really became possible in the late 60s and early 70s. It's the subtle differences between multiple performances by the same singer that creates this almost electric quality to the choir vibe. So, how did they get that sound? Let's find out. So it's not surprising when a band that has 3 or more good vocalists has thick choir-like harmonies. You know, bands like the Beatles, Eagles, Fleetwood Mac, Queen, Crosby, Stills and Nash. We kind of expect rich harmonies from vocal bands like that, and they can even sound great live just by singing as a group of 3 or 4. But what about when you're working and recording alone? How can you build your own voice into that choir-like sound? Well, you do it by layering harmonies through the multi-track recording process called overdubbing. And I gotta say, the only thing that gets me as excited as layering guitar tracks is layering vocal tracks. So this video series is going to explore the topic of single singer harmony choirs in detail. I'll start by sharing how I learned to build my own harmonies and the evolution of equipment that allowed me to do it. And then in part 2, I'll take you inside how I build a single singer choir. In fact, I'm going to show you how I stacked 13 voices on just 4 audio tracks. And then in part 3, I'm going to give you the tips and tricks you need to build your own harmony choirs. So these are tricks I've learned the hard way, so you don't have to. They're going to make the process easier. They'll definitely help you avoid pitfalls. All right, so I've been recording harmony vocals since the early 70s. And I gained my skills in stages just based on the technology I had available. Because back in that era, you know, with analog tape, every musician was limited by the number of tracks or layers they had available. As of the early 70s, most of the major label artists, like the ones you heard at the start of the video, they had access to at least 16-track tape recorders and often 24-track tape recorders. And the more tracks you had, the easier it was to record a single singer choir. Now, I started with just 2 tracks. My parents bought a Magnavox 2-track reel-to-reel recorder, and it had this feature called Sound on Sound. And that meant I could record 1 track of myself playing and singing, and then listen to it and sing and play again to the second track. And then magically I had 2-part harmony sung by 2 different takes of me. So I actually attempted this on my very first original song when I was 10 years old. Hey, I tried, right? So sometime in the late 70s, I saw James Taylor in concert. He'd pre-recorded harmony vocals onto a reel-to-reel, and he used a foot switch to trigger the tape playback so he could sing along with the harmonies live. It was kind of like an early sampler. So that was a novelty at the time, but I thought it was so cool, and I think other fans liked it too, because playing along with his reel-to-reel backup tracks became kind of a regular part of JT's act. I found this Shower the People clip from 1988. I'm going to put a link in the description if you want to watch the whole thing.
Portions of the next song were pre-recorded.
Don't think twice, just shower the people you love with love. Show them the way.
Seeing James use backup tracks inspired me to try the same thing. So when I'd prepare for live shows, I'd record 2 harmony parts onto my reel-to-reel. And then my sound guy would trigger the tape and I'd play along and sing the lead part live. So I was singing 3-part harmonies alone on stage, and people seemed to love it. So I found this recording from a live show when I was 16 years old. I'm singing Gordon Lightfoot's The Circle is Small. Check it out.
Oh, I can see it in your eyes and feel it in the way you kiss my lips. I can hear it in your voice whenever we are talking like this.
So for 10 years in the 70s, I only had 2 tracks to work with, but I got a lot out of them. And then in 1980, I got financed to record my first complete album. Instead of spending the budget on a studio rental, my friend Randall Albert and I decided to invest in our own equipment. And so we bought a 4-track reel-to-reel. We got 4 channels of DBX Type 1 noise reduction, 4 channels of Tapco spring reverb with EQ, an Orban parametric EQ, and a 6-channel mixer. Woo! I mean, that sounds kind of quaint now, but it was pretty hot stuff for a home recording setup in 1980. So there we were with 0 experience, but a lot of determination, and we used our own gear to record an LP called Over the Line. Now, before the album fell into total obscurity, it actually got a decent amount of college and local radio airplay, and it earned me a spot opening for some national artists. Now, I'm happy to say you can hear it right now, because just a few years ago, my friend Andrew Bush from Grandma's Warehouse in LA, we've done some videos about him and together. Anyway, Andrew remastered the album and we released it on all the streaming services. On Over the Line, I maxed out at 3-part harmonies, and that was because we only had 4 total tracks. I was doing most of the playing and singing, so we had to record vocals along with other instruments, and we had to pre-mix each track. So we couldn't record enough voices to achieve that full choir sound, but we did capture some pretty solid 3-voice harmonies. And I learned a lot about recording harmonies from making that album. In some cases, I sang parallel harmonies, where the lead and harmony parts follow each other, usually forming standard chords, kind of like this.
When I finally leave the city behind, the lines in the mirror, the eyes staring blind, I haven't lost track of love, but my fortune's been spent and I'll be looking for you when I cross over the line.
But I also experimented with harmonies that weren't parallel. I wrote separate harmony lines that diverged from each other, both melodically and lyrically. And so instead of singing just parallel thirds and fifths, each line is its own musical statement, more like a 3-part invention in classical music or a fugue. So check out this example, 3 interweaving harmony parts from my song Another Side.
I said that he never fucking what's happened, so waves just started going right. Winning without even placing a bet, so you're having a great time. People tell me that something's gonna change the happiness, but they hold their right, so what could it be? I could get used to this. It wasn't love, the bridge was burning.
So that's my early history building and recording harmonies using only my own voice. If you want to build choir-like harmonies, I think a really great way to start is by recording simple 2- and 3-part harmonies. Just a single recording of each part. That's going to keep the recording process fairly simple, and it's going to give you a chance to hone your harmony singing and timing until you really like what you hear. So I did 10 years of recording 2- and 3-part harmonies before I upgraded my equipment enough to build my first true single voice or single singer choir. So that was 1993. I was living in LA and I got a Tascam 238 8-track cassette recorder. So this fit 8 tracks on 1/8 of an inch wide cassette tape, all running in one direction. I mean, that totally seems impossible, but it had built-in DBX noise reduction and it sounded shockingly good. So 8 tracks of audio. 1 was usually striped with SMPTE timecode, so the tape deck could synchronize with MIDI instruments, and that left me with 7 total audio tracks. I knew at the time at least 3 of those would get filled with non-MIDI instruments like guitars, so the question was, could I achieve a single singer choir sound with just 4 vocal tracks? And it turns out the answer was yes. Take a quick listen to this original song called 10,000 Flowers.
I wanna give you 10,000 flowers. I wanna love you 10,000 hours. I wanna give you 10,000 flowers. 10,000 flowers.
What you're hearing is 12 of me singing together, plus the lead vocal, for a total of 13 voices. All right, in part 2, I'm going to show you exactly how I built that choir of 1. So come back next week, we're going to break it down. In the meantime, please take a moment to like the video, subscribe, hit the bell, and then visit guitardiscoveries.com. You'll find over 100 more videos that are going to help you play guitar, sing, record, and sound great doing it. See you next week.